What is going on, Los Angeles? Welcome into Dyrud After Dark. It's been a while since I've done a live Dyrud After Dark here on the LA Football Network, but so much stuff happened today on a Sunday. We got to get into it. I'm joined by my good buddy Jamal Madney, who covers UCLA. He went to USC undergrad, UCLA postgrad, and now he's with us at the LA Football Network doing a bunch of stuff as well. So thanks for joining me, Jamal. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Well, great to see you, Ryan. What an epic day indeed for LA football today, college and pro.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get into all of it. So we're talking the Lincoln Riley hire at USC. We're talking UCLA finishing the season with an exclamation point against Cal. You and I were both at that game last night, and then unfortunately, I got to get into the Rams and Chargers that just looked abysmal today. But while you're here, we're talking good news because it was all good news for our college teams. Today's episode of Dyrud After Dark brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. Make sure everyone to check them out. Use the promo code LAFB to double your welcome bonus. But Jamal, so Lincoln Riley is the new head coach of the USC Trojans. That's, as we mentioned, that's your undergrad. What just went through your head when you heard the news? Because we talked last night, we were talking about scenarios, what SC was going to do. And that was one me and you both kind of talked about while we were sitting in the press box, but it was like, and then he comes out and says he's not taking the LSU job. Never said USC, but it seemed like everyone took that as I'm staying at Oklahoma in this breaks today. What was going through your mind?
Well, Ryan, I mean, it felt like a total pipe dream based on our conversation yesterday and everything that led up to it. When I looked at it at first on social media and the news, I mean, I almost felt like it was a typo, that there's something was incorrect there. And I almost got flashes of the Kingsbury hire a couple of years ago where then, he reneged and went to the Cardinals. And I was like, well, is this possibly right? And so, to then see it and be confirmed, first of all, I think it's congratulations to Mike Bond and Carol Folt on a home run hire and really demonstrating, total commitment to returning USC football to glory. And I think this not only is a tectonic shift in the Pac-12, this is a tectonic shift in college football. And I think the sport is better when you have a power out west, and that brand and that legacy and really that identity is USC at its core. So huge day to celebrate for Trojan fans. Hard to believe considering it was the night after a loss in a 4-7 season, but this is euphoria and ecstasy right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the start of something great, and we've talked about it kind of all season. It's about, okay, this is a bad year. It's a down year for SC, but the excitement is in the future because, we finally can move on past the Clay Helton era. We can look towards what's to come. But then it was that concern of like, well, what is to come? Like, who is going to be the guy? It has to be a slam dunk hire. And it certainly seems like this is. Now, just on a football sense, Jamal, here's a guy that, was under Bob Stoops, the great Bob Stoops at Oklahoma, which random, but I heard that he's actually going to coach the Sooners in the bowl game or something. I don't know if that's actually true.
That's
right. Bizarre. That's super bizarre. But, under him, he kind of has he's a great offensive mind, but runs still kind of a spread style offense. It's not a true air raid, I don't think, but a spread style. And I know a lot of concern for Trojan faithful was they want to get back to ground and pound, having a fullback I formation. I don't know if we'll see that necessarily, but I think we will see a good running game. I mean, Oklahoma's produced some great running backs in the years he's been there, also some great quarterbacks. So what, just on a football level, before we even get into recruiting and that, but just X's and O's, do you like about this hire for the Trojans, or is that a concern for you as well?
No, I think it's an absolute slam dunk hire, X's and O's. I think Riley has a great understanding of what is modern college football, where you need a mobile quarterback. You need the ability to have multiple options and multiple reads on a particular play. But above and beyond, it's all about balance. And if you really look at Oklahoma's offense the last 5 years, they've been right at about 50-50 pass run. The Bakers and the Kyler Murrays and the Jalen Hurts have gotten a lot of publicity, and rightfully so. He's the architect of 2 Heisman Trophy winners and a Heisman finalist. But if you really look at Oklahoma, they have been very well balanced as a team over the last 5 years. And that's something that's really been missing from SC football under the air raid, where they're really throwing the ball 2/3 to 70% of the time and only running it 1/3 of the time, and really in very obvious run situations. And I think that's been the chagrin of most Trojan fans, is that the offenses just look so predictable, and that has sort of contributed to its lack of explosiveness. And Riley comes from the Texas Tech Mike Leach coaching tree. He's actually really good friends with Graham Harrell. So he
Mm-hmm.
has sort of those air raid principles. Then he went to East Carolina, had a tremendous amount of success there in a short period of time, and then was under the tutelage of Stoops. So I think he's got all of the right elements. He's almost kind of Steve Kerr-esque when it comes to college football in terms of the right spots, the right pedigree. And I think this is an opportunity for him to show, can he build a program? He inherited a great situation from Stoops, and now I think this is a great chapter for him to build something.
Absolutely. And, so the thing about the air raid that, if people don't know, but it's almost a offense built for programs that don't necessarily have the talent to put out great offensive firepower. So they built this air raid style system that spreads things out. It utilizes space. It utilizes, quarterbacks deciding before they even snap the ball. They don't have to think too much and use their progressions too much. And so it works in those smaller programs. That's why you see some of these schools like a Texas Tech, like light teams on fire offensively, because they're able to utilize that to a T. But when you're a program like Oklahoma or USC, you don't want a true full air raid because you have the talent. I mean, you should have the talent in your program. And so to your point, I think Lincoln Riley has taken some of those principles, but he's also, I don't want to say smartened them, but in a sense, he's taken those and then like put them on steroids and just made them actually more prolific in the sense of not being a true air raid and actually being an offense that can be run at a top 5, top 10 school and also can translate to the NFL, which we've seen his players go on and be great in the NFL, which, some programs don't have that same pedigree. So I think there'll be no concern for that at all. Anyone out there is like, oh no, another air raid. It's going to be a Graham Harrell 2.0. I don't think that is the case. We'll see if they keep Graham Harrell. I don't know what that will look like. Real quick before we kind of keep diving into this, but we had a question here from Marco, and I'm just curious your thoughts. Do you think we'll see Spencer Rattler as a Trojan coming over? I have my opinion, but I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah, Marco, it's interesting. I mean, I think Dart is someone who I think even before last night is somebody who's thought of as the quarterback of the future and really that centerpiece. I think if you look at his skill set, the ability to be mobile, the ability to have a quick release, and just the dynamic playmaking ability when the play breaks down are all kind of principles of very successful Oklahoma quarterbacks. We haven't really seen that too much from Dart over the last few weeks because he's still not completely healthy. But I think that Dart is really a centerpiece. And I think the other piece is, Malachi Nelson, the 5-star recruit from Los Alamitos High, just decommitted from Oklahoma, and he's probably going to follow Riley to USC. So I think that the cupboard is going to be pretty deep with 5-star and dynamic playmakers. And so I think there's enough there where SC doesn't have to chase Rattler.
Yeah, and I don't think it'd be smart to anyway. In just my opinion, maybe I'm biased, but I think Dart's already in 2 starts. I like his trajectory more than what Spencer Rattler.
No question.
I think honestly it would be, and I don't think either of these is going to happen, but I think it'd be more likely Caleb Wilson follows Lincoln Riley over than Spencer Rattler.
For sure.
Because I don't think Lincoln Riley probably wants Spencer Rattler if I'm just being honest. But yeah, Jamal, it's crazy. We've already seen it's been less than 8 hours since this news broke, and we've already seen many kids decommit from Oklahoma that we most likely, not all of them, but a good handful of them will probably now commit to USC, especially the SoCal kids. You mentioned Malachi, who I believe is from Los Al High School. And then there's other kids too that, from Florida, from Texas that have decommitted that we could see now that there's a little pipeline with USC anyway there. But I want to ask you about this. There's been 5 or 6 commits to the Trojans that have decommitted over the last few weeks. Do you think there's a chance now they're saying, well, hold on a minute. Now I kind of want to go back to that school I committed to a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I know that with Domani Jackson, the 5-star defensive back out of Mater Dei, he decommitted recently. And I know that the SC athletic department kind of reached out to him and said, hey, there's an announcement coming here in a couple of hours. I think it's going to be something of interest to you. I definitely think folks will really reconsider coming back to SC. At the end of the day, when you look at the studs out of Mater Dei and Los Alamitos and Centennial, and you just see the rich pedigree of those folks in Southern California, who wouldn't want to play close to home with the tradition and the history of USC now that you have a top 5 coach and you're seriously can talk about playoff berths and competing for national championships. So I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of movement in both directions over the next 15 days.
Yeah, I'm just so excited. I think it's great. Hats off to Carol Folt. Hats off to Mike Bone. First, I want to say Carol Folt because she came in as president of the university, and I don't want to say like cleaned up because it wasn't like they were like bad character guys, but essentially be rid all the old Pete Carroll legacy guys that they had just been kind of had their stamp and label on this program for so long. And she brought in a Mike Bone who was a true AD, not a former player, not a former Pete Carroll guy. He was a guy that built. He had some stuff at Colorado and then built a program at Cincinnati, brought him into USC to really turn things around. And then now hats off to Mike Bone for being able to go out and get a coach that no one thought was available. I mean, I don't think anyone really truly thought that Lincoln Riley was available. And if he was available, the thought was he was either going to the NFL or LSU. And I think everyone just didn't even give him a shot for USC. So that has to say a lot about Mike Bone and like what his selling points and what he was able to display to Lincoln Riley, but also that USC is still a desirable place to be. And whatever has happened in the last few years, whatever's being talked about in the media, it is still a mecca for football in Southern California. And it is still a place that top coaches will come. And now just seeing how the fans reacted. I mean, if this Cal game was in the USC Coliseum next weekend, even though he's not here yet, I think that place would be packed because people are pumped up right now.
No question.
But all that being said, question for you, because I've seen now some people saying this, and I don't agree. I'll say what I think too. But so I've seen some saying, well, the LSU job was there. Lincoln Riley said he wasn't going to LSU, ends up going to California. He's showing that and Oklahoma is going to the SEC as well. So he bails on the SEC. He's probably scared to coach in the SEC, doesn't want to hurt his legacy, yada, 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 yada. I'm sure you've seen stuff like that too. Just what's your thoughts on people that say that?
Ryan, I think Lincoln Riley, truthfully at his core, is an NFL guy. And I think when he sort of looks at the landscape, both in college and pro, and sees sort of who are his contemporaries sitting at 38 years old with the level of success that he's had up until this point, I think he thinks of Sean McVay. I think he thinks of Shanahan. He thinks of Kingsbury. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately Lincoln Riley is going to be a guy who's going to make the jump to the NFL. And I think presumably seeing that, and that was either going to happen directly from Oklahoma or something was, I think, going to need to be sizable to take place for him to deviate from that. I think that the Oklahoma going to the SEC certainly makes things a lot more competitive to win conference titles year in and year out. I mean, he sort of owned the Big 12. He had it rolling. And I think he ultimately sort of saw the move to the SEC as something that may not be as advantageous for him in terms of his stock that would remain hot for him to go to the NFL. And I think ultimately, personally, I think this is a 4-year stop. I don't think we're going to have Riley for very long. I think this is a 3 to 4 year stop before he goes ultimately to the NFL. But I think this was the only lateral job that was out there that was not an SEC job, that was not Ohio State and Michigan, that I think allowed him to feel like he really had ownership of that particular territory and continue to have success to then lead him ultimately to the NFL. So I think Trojan fans should be very excited, but I think you almost have to think of it as sort of a presidential term. I think he's going to be there 4 years, and then I think 4 years or less, probably going to be 3 or 4 years, and then he's going to make the jump to the NFL. But hopefully by then, that infrastructure is rebuilt at SC. You can have sort of a succession tree off of him, and you can sort of continue the success moving forward.
Well, that's very interesting, and you kind of answered a little bit at the end there, but I guess does that concern you at all? Still love the hire, does that concern you at all, or do you think it's okay? No, it's 4 years, build his tree. He'll be able to basically mold someone that can take over the program, like we've seen with Urban Meyer and Ryan Day at Ohio State, something like that.
Yeah, Ryan, I think SC fans are hungry for a winner and hungry for the level of success that the program historically has done. And, if I think people, it's sort of become mythology now, right, with the Carroll era. But, the peak of the Carroll era was 7 years. And then he ultimately moved on to the Seahawks. And so I think that Trojan fans, if there's a couple of playoff appearances and possibly a national championship in this 4-year window, and then he moves on, I think all of the Trojan family would gratefully trade that for a term. And so I think that's sort of the nature of college football that we're in today, where I think that so many jobs open up. There's so much volatility that I think it's hard to project beyond sort of 5+ years. And I think just looking at Riley, looking at the level of ambition that he has in himself, and I think this was a really strategic move. I think he thought that he could stay at Oklahoma before he could make the jump. Didn't really like where the tectonic shift was occurring with his spot. Found a great opportunity at USC, took it, and I think he's a great strategist for that. And I think our folks, in terms of Folt and Bond, I think saw that, played it up, took advantage of that window of opportunity. But I think it's a 4-year and out type of situation. And I think that's just sort of the nature of college football today. So I'm not overly concerned.
Yeah. I mean, it's rare to find a Saban that's going to stay somewhere for 15 years and just be dominant that long. So I would not be shocked at all I'm going there. But I also see it, and this is the positive way I see it as well, because just for the detractors saying like, oh, he's afraid to be in the SEC, and so he's escaping out there. I see it as, okay, and depending how you want to take this, but okay, he can go to the Pac-12, he can be like the Nick Saban of the West, create a juggernaut again at USC, be the premier program in the Pac-12 for the entire tenure he's here, whether it's 4 years, 8 years, however it may be. And then every single year, because of that, he gets his shot at the SEC in the college football playoff, instead of having to go through the gauntlet that is the SEC, beat each other up, do all that. He can go do it in the Pac-12, rebuild a premier program, which he would get so much credit for. I mean, it's not like SC is a winning program right now. They're 4-7. So it's not like he's taking over a great program. He has to rebuild it up so he can still prove how good he is by doing that. But then he goes through the Pac-12 and then he can go beat the SEC in the college football playoff, which hasn't happened yet. I mean, a Pac-12 team hasn't done that. So to me, that's almost more impressive. He can take a Pac-12 team, albeit the great USC, build them up, and then go beat the SEC teams when it counts in the college football playoff. That hasn't happened since that institution has been around. That's more impressive than going to LSU that won the national championship 2 years ago and just bringing them back, in my opinion.
I don't know. No, Ryan, I think that's spot on. And I think reinventing West Coast college football and as an architect to do so in this sort of modern era would be an incredible achievement. And I think he's smart enough to know the opportunity at hand. And I think he has the ability to do that and build his own narrative and his own story in that way. But and at the same time, only have to potentially play 2 or 3 really high quality opponents a year before the playoff versus 7 or 8. He's got the capability to play in either conference. But, the reality is it's going to be a less friction type of environment in the Pac-12 than in the SEC. That's just sort of the reality that we live in.
Last question on this, and I want to jump to UCLA before getting you out of here, Jamal. And I'm putting you on the spot here because it's been less than 8 hours since he's been hired. But who are some potential defensive guys you'd want to see him bring over? I mean, do you think he'll bring his DC over, or do you think he'll go to someone else and try to get him to follow him to USC and build a new defensive scheme?
Yeah, I think that Oklahoma has been a little bit shaky on that side of the ball the last couple of years. And so I think he's going to, take a fresh approach. I think a name that potentially could make a lot of sense for him is Jimmy Lake, who recently, left Washington, who is a defensive guy. And I think who's a lot more comfortable in that particular way. And I think SC does really well. I think when they go to a traditional 4-3, when, there's just such a hotbed of defensive linemen in the Southern California area. And I think when they can kind of control that box and play kind of more traditional 4-3 and looking for a guy that really has had success there is probably what he wants to look for.
Yeah, I think so. I know it's funny. We talked about Jimmy Lake to UCLA potentially, but he would be great with either school, I think, because he's a great defensive coach. Just didn't work out as a head coach when he was the man. So, but hey, man, great hire. I'm still in shock that, Lincoln Riley, it's fun seeing USC in the news in a positive light, at least for 24 hours, because it's been a rough 5-6. It's been a rough almost 15 years, you could argue, outside of, the one Rose Bowl year under Clay Helton. So, and even that year started off bumpy. So it's good to have some positive stuff. And I think it's exciting to see what Lincoln Riley will do here as he's going to get in the building right away and get to work. And we'll see these recruits start flipping and we'll have plenty of information on the LA Football Network all about it, talking about it on our shows, but also articles. And I'm sure Jamal will contribute to as he does a great job. But let's shift to UCLA now before we get you out of here. We won't take too long on this, but we were at the game last night. All around, I think from start to finish, really played phenomenal. Hats off to Coach Kelly and his coaching staff after the big win over USC for keeping his team up and having them come out ready to face a Cal team and look like the much more dominant team. So before we get into kind of our conversation about what could happen in the bowl games and what could happen in the future, just what was your thoughts about the game last night and how they ended their regular season and their first 8-win season in 5 years or so?
Yep. I think, Ryan, it was really impressive, the professionalism and the focus that they approached this game. It was sort of start to finish. They had a very clear game plan. Charbonnet ran for over 100. Believe it or not, it was the first time all season DTR ran for over 100 yards. They
That's
got
crazy.
the ball to their key guys. Dulcich 6 catches, Phillips 6 catches, 6 catches of Charbonnet out of the backfield. And they just looked very focused. I mean, it was the first time since the Washington game that DTR didn't have an interception. They looked clean on the offensive side of the ball, didn't try to force too many things. Very, very positive from an execution standpoint. And defensively, it was probably their best defensive performance since the LSU game, and statistically their best defensive performance the whole season. Outside of one really nice ball that Chase Garbers threw to Remigio for 27 yards where he sort of dropped it into triple coverage. And outside of really the muff by Kaz Allen that created a 10-yard field, Cal really didn't do anything the whole game.
Yeah.
And even in the fourth quarter garbage time, the level of intensity to prevent Cal from getting into the end zone, really impressive. UCLA now finishes with 3 straight wins, 3 straight 40-point performances, and 3 straight games where they really made significant runs to end the game. They had 37 consecutive points against Colorado. They finished with 32 consecutive points against Cal yesterday, and then they went on that 27-7 run to close the game against USC. So the ability to finish in the second half the last 3 weeks has been very impressive to get them to 8-4, and that's coaching. Chip had them ready to play, and so for as much as he's been maligned this year about not doing certain things, the ability to have them ready after such a huge win and just thoroughly have this sort of comprehensive performance against a Cal team that ran for 352 yards against Stanford really started building momentum. They've had wins against Oregon State. They've had some really quality wins, got everybody back from COVID, and for them to be able to execute the way they did, a lot of excitement in Bruin Nation, and there should be for the way they close the season.
Yeah, and Cal's I know they're probably the bottom of the Pac-12 at this point, but they're a well-coached team with Wilcox there, and they've always been a defensive juggernaut. Whether they've been good or bad record-wise, they've always been a good defensive team. And UCLA just ran roughshod on them offensively yesterday, which has kind of been the theme of this year. The issue has been the defense, which last night really showed up and came to play. So before we get to Chip, Jamal, I think everyone's in agreement there. That performance, as great as it was, and you love seeing the seniors ball out on their last home game at the Rose Bowl in a UCLA Bruins uniform, but that alone should not be enough to save DC and Azzanero's job, correct? Like, they have to move on from him no matter what, right?
No question about it. Azzanero, that was a lovely sort of farewell tour. He kind of, think of it as giving the sort of the Miss America wave, on sort of the Disneyland float on sort of the way out of the building. Exactly. But Azzanero's got to go. No question about it. And I think that's, Chip's got to realize that, or Martin Jarman, as part of an inevitable kind of Chip extension, is going to have to make that a conditioning term. But I think that was the last regular season game, certainly, we saw of Mr. Azzanero.
Yeah, and I agree. And this will be talked about up until the end of the bowl game, I'm sure, because it's split still in Bruin Nation. Me and you are in agreement, though, that Chip needs to be retained. I know it's been 4 years, and his record in 4 years is not great, 18-25 now. But we've seen progress every single year. We've seen now where this team is going 8-4, going into a bowl game. If they're able to win the bowl game, which we'll get to here in a second about potential opponents and whatnot, a 9-4 season, you rattle off 4 straight wins in the year, a lot of momentum. You've built a culture, and why would you break that up? And before I ask you kind of your thoughts on it, one other thing, because I've been just really kind of digesting and trying to think about what I can say to people about it, because there's still, he's still 18-25. It shouldn't have taken 4 years, yada, yada, yada. When he was at Oregon, when he got, became famous, became Chip Kelly, He was the offensive coordinator there for 2 years under then head coach, who was the winningest head coach in Oregon history, a legend at the University of Oregon, took over as the offensive coordinator for 2 years. And then that head coach resigned to become the AD at the school. So Chip Kelly inherited an already built program that he was infiltrated in the offense, or he helped kind of build the offense, took that over and then brought it to better heights. But it wasn't like he came where he came to UCLA now, where he basically had to tear this thing down to the studs. They were low on scholarships, had to rebuild everything, implement his culture, his offensive scheme, all of that. And it took longer than people anticipated. But here we are in year 4, 8-4, going to a bowl game, 1 or 2 wins away from really having the potential to be Pac-12 champions. So I think he's done a really good job. I know there's some things that obviously haven't been good, but I mean, overall, just talking football wise, I think he has earned the right to be back for next year. I'll let you counter after that.
No, Ryan, I completely agree. I mean, I think, you nailed so many of the points on the head. He inherited 57 scholarship players his first year. He had to sort of completely rebuild this. UCLA hasn't really shown an ability to win consistently in the post-Donahue era when SC has not been on sanctions. And so this is a very unique job. This is a difficult job to win. And in many years, everyone talks about this being year 4. This is really year 3 when you factor COVID into play. And you can clearly see the jump in terms of win-loss productivity. He's improved by over 10 percentage points from a winning percentage standpoint each year up until now. There's been tremendous improvement. You can see it even when they're losing games. I mean, outside of the Utah game, you take Oregon, you take Arizona State, you take Fresno State. They lost 2 of those games in the last minute. And Arizona State, they were driving to tie the game at the beginning of the fourth quarter, before a 4th and 1 at the 5-yard line sort of derailed them. And so they have been super competitive in 11 of the 12 games. And again, if they close with 4 straight wins, get to 9-4, UCLA has never won more than 10 games in their entire history. And so if a coach can get you to 9-4, you're 1 off the school record for single season wins. How can you possibly consider firing him when you haven't seen the ceiling of what is possible? And the last thing I would say to sort of alleviate Bruin fans' concern is take a deep breath, take a step back and say, who can we get legitimately that's within our scope, within our sphere of influence, within our budget, that is significantly better than Chip Kelly? And I promise you can't really come up with an answer. I know there's talk about Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen's a great offensive coach who doesn't particularly care too much about recruiting, who doesn't care particularly much about program building relationships, and building an organization. And so all of these other coaches are inherently flawed. You look at even guys like Matt Campbell, you look at some of these others, the consolidation of power in college football, is rewarding guys for getting close. Guys haven't actually done too much to get these other jobs. They've just kind of gotten close. And so you've got Chip Kelly, who's really he's going to build something special. And I think, counter to our earlier segment about, the possibility of a guy like Lincoln Riley leaving after 4 years, I think UCLA wants to hire a person that's going to be there for 12 to 15 years. They had so much success when Donahue was there for 15 years. I think Chip's personality fits really well with where UCLA is situated in this city, his innovativeness around the transfer portal. And I think they have demonstrated that they can win. And so I think for Bruin fans, hang on here. Give the guy 1 more year to really showcase what he can do. But you can't argue that the improvement was significant here at 8-4, finishing top 4 in the Pac-12, and really being a hair away from a 10-2, even an 11-1 season. I think he's done a remarkable job and will continue to do so.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I know a lot of fans, because they hate SC, which as they should, but they'll see, oh man, they go out and get Lincoln Riley and we're stuck here with Chip Kelly. And, but what Chip's done, he's done some really good things. And as you mentioned, like, who else are you going to go out and get that's, it's a public school. It's not US. You don't have USC money. That's just point blank. That's a fact right there. Lincoln Riley's going to be making probably close to 10 million a year. I'm guessing. No, nothing's come out yet. Chip Kelly's making 3.5. So that's one. You're not, who are you going to go out and get and you're going to pay $8 million? The Harbaughs, the Sabins, they're all making 7, 8, 9 million. you got Chip for 3.5. Who can you pay 3.5 that is better than what Chip has built right now? And I don't want to come off, and I know you're not doing this at all, I don't want to come off as, well, we're just settling then. It's like, no, we're not settling. We're just saying, if you're going to move on from someone, you need a plan that's going to improve your program. And I don't see one out there that improves it. Now, 2 years from now, if they still can't get over that hump of maybe 7-8 wins, then we can assess. But 8, 9, 10 win seasons for this program right now is good for this program. And you build from that and you continue building. You're going to get more recruits, especially with NIL now here and all that. In Los Angeles with Martin Jarman, with the Jordan brand, it's going to start recruiting itself as well. And so Chip, who doesn't like recruiting, won't really have to in another year or two if they keep winning 9, 10 games. So I think it's going to be good. And I think another huge thing that can benefit him is in this bowl game coming up. You know, we talked last night where it's probably going to be either the Vegas Bowl or the Holiday Bowl. We're assuming with them finishing 4th, that seems like one of the likely spots. If it's the Vegas Bowl, it would be a Big Ten team, I believe. If it's the Holiday Bowl, it'll be an ACC team. Me and you are talking, if it can be the Holiday Bowl with an ACC team and they get matched up with Clemson, how huge that could be for this program. Talk to us about that.
I mean, Ryan, I think it's a game changer. I mean, if you get the opportunity to play Clemson, in San Diego, I mean, this is, they've sort of been the co-authors of the decade in this sport with Alabama. And granted, they've had a little bit of a down year here, but they've really sort of revved up their offense in the second half of the season. They're playing really good ball. And for UCLA to play possibly a Clemson would be incredible as a measuring stick game to see where they are with elite athletes and elite program, and just a showcase of what UCLA is nationally to possible recruits. UCLA is a very special place. It's a very special institution. And you talked about, the different layers. I think they've got a great AD with Martin Jarman. There's some unique challenges at UCLA in terms of recruiting. 80% of their class needs to have a 3.0 GPA or above, which is significantly higher than NCAA standards. They have to deal with the state of California, the regions. It's a very complex place. It's a very special place. And so, A, I think Chip has to be able to navigate that. But B, when you can showcase UCLA as a brand nationally and compete with Clemson and keep it a close game or potentially even win, you're talking about an incredible snowball effect that can bleed into the next year. Not to compare the two, but, when you talk about the great LSU team of 2 years ago, when they went 15-0 with Burrow, they were about 9-4 the year before. They had a big bowl win that kind of set them up momentum-wise. And so that's what a big bowl win can do for you. It gives you the 20 extra practices with a potential victory. It really sets the stage to come back. And some of the guys also that are the stars on the team that are kind of deciding whether to go to the NFL or not, hey, maybe they come back for one more year to build something great and make a special season. So there's all of these incredible factors at play. And, Holiday against Clemson would be spectacular. Hey, even Las Vegas Bowl against a Michigan State potentially that's 10-2 would be incredible. So I think there's a lot to be excited about for UCLA in terms of where they're going to be in this bowl game. And I think it can set them up for tremendous success moving forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about Michigan State too. I mean, the matchup either way, I think it's going to be fantastic, more than we've seen in years past, and just being able to set yourself up for the future with a win like that, and like you said, guys coming back. I mean, it's hard to compare to the LSU because of how great they were that year, but you hit the nail on the head though. They had an 8-win, 9-win year before. Everyone came back. They had a great coaching staff. They put it all together. Their quarterback, Joe Burrow, obviously one of the greatest college seasons ever. And so if UCLA does the same and brings some of these guys back, like Kyle Phillips, if they can convince Zach Charbonnet to come back, I know that the Bruin Nation's kind of even split on this, but hey, if DTR decides to come back and you run it back with this whole unit, who knows what they can do next season with the same coaching staff, a la a new defensive coordinator. But outside of that, I think it'd be pretty exciting. So I think both programs right now, USC and UCLA, a lot of positives moving forward into the future. And we'll have, 3 or 4 weeks to talk about this potential UCLA bowl game. But Jamal, you're the man. I appreciate you jumping on with me on a Sunday. Everyone make sure to check out Jamal's awesome work at the LA Football Network. And, he's a partner in this thing now, and he's all in. So we appreciate you. And thanks for taking the time, man.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Always a pleasure, and really excited for what's to come.
Absolutely. So you're at the forefront. So we'll be in touch. We'll talk. Enjoy your night. Okay.
All righty, man. Take care.
Take care. So the great Jamal, love that guy. What a guy. Does awesome stuff for us here at the LA Football Network. Like I said, writes covering UCLA, but is also now involved in a lot of our business and partnership affairs. So been a huge help there. So excited, man. It's it's been a tough year for USC and it's been an up and down year for UCLA. But I think where we're at right now, both these programs are in a good spot. UCLA is in a very good spot. I think moving forward, you need to just stay the course. Again, like we said, minus the defensive coordinator, stay the course though. And then USC bringing in Lincoln Riley. I mean, the future's bright with that hire. Now, not so bright and a lot of concern with our pro teams. Today was not a good day for the Rams, not a good day for the Chargers. Going to get into both. I'm going to start with the Rams. It's this program's, sponsored by Golden Road Brewery, usually drinking the Golden Road, but I had to switch over to whiskey. That's how rough these games were today. So, I'm sipping on a high class Costco Canadian blend. That's what they call it. It actually is good. Anyone that knows Costco alcohol is actually fantastic, but that's what I'm sipping on. So if you're in here in the chat, let me know what you're drinking. If you are drinking our sorrows away from that horrible loss. But man, I'm always a very positive guy. I think anyone that interacts with me on Twitter, especially if you interact with me in person, actually, which hopefully we can start doing a lot more of. But you'll know I take things, I don't spin anything. I say spin, but I don't create narratives or do anything false, but I like to look at things in a positive light. And, seeing this Rams team, what their record is and what the record was leading into this game, a lot of concerns, but you're getting some new players and you get some big acquisitions in Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. And you still have to get them, infiltrated into what you're doing. You've had some injuries, you had some guys bouncing around. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, those are two bad losses, but this team is a very good team. Sean McVay is still a very, very good head coach. I would say top 5 coach, this and that. After this game, though, in the Packers, it's very hard for me to be positive about this team. I still am not doom and gloom. I'm not saying the season's over. They're bums. I will never call player bums anyway, because they can do something that I never could do. Coaches too. But after having the games they had back to back against the Titans and the Niners, and then getting a bye week to prepare, to change, to adapt, to really evolve is a better word for it, into what you're going to be for the future and going to the Super Bowl. Because every team's plan is to go to the Super Bowl. I mean, you wouldn't be playing the game if that wasn't your goal. But for this Rams teams, it's even more so that when you go all in on these big, big trades, acquisitions, and you're giving up future assets, which I've talked about a lot, I love it. I think they've created a model and a blueprint of how to run an organization very differently. And that's why they've had a winning season every year under Sean McVay. A, great coaching, but B, they get great personnel and they don't take risks in the draft. They say, hey, let's just go get proven commodities. But when you're doing that year in and year in and year in and year in, it has to work. And they're still 7-4, but you do that, you make big moves. You get Odell Beckham Jr., who's a free agent, so you're not giving anything up for that. So anyone that's starting to get sour on that, that's it. I've talked when he was signed, it wasn't like it was a win-win. You're not trading anything away. He was released. He was a free agent. You made the cap space for a reason. Cool. Now, there were probably some other repercussions from going after something like that, which I'll get into here in a minute. But you make these moves. You look really bad against the Titans. You look even worse against the Niners. And then you go into the bye week. And there's a lot of criticism involving your coach and Sean McVay. There's a lot of criticism involving your quarterback that you traded 2 first-round picks for in Matthew Stafford. There's a lot of criticism in the running game. Not necessarily that it hasn't been good, but just it hasn't been utilized. And then probably the most criticism has been on Raheem Morris and the defense. So it was all out there. and you know you're playing a Packers team that is a Super Bowl favorite in Lambeau, and it was I called it a must-win. Not because this game's going to decide to go to the playoffs. I still think this is a playoff team. I still think they're going to improve. They're going to get things right. But at this point in the season, it was a barometer to see if this team is actually good or if they're not. Now, let me say this to anyone listening, any fans out there. This loss does not mean the Rams are trash. All right? Get that out of your head. They are not a trash team. It's still a top 5, probably top 12, 11, 10 team in the NFL. I would say higher. I'm just being very, very modest. I still think they're a top 7 team in the NFL, probably. Every good team this year has had bad losses. The Packers have had a bad loss. The Bills have had multiple bad losses. The Buccaneers have had bad losses. Losing to a good Titans team, division rival Niners, and a great Packers team does not make you a trash team. Now, what it does show, though, is they are not right now a Super Bowl team. That's what it shows. They're not a bad team, but they are not a Super Bowl team. And why is that? How much of that is coaching? How much of that is execution? It's only a couple hours past game time, so I haven't gotten full into the film and whatnot. So I think all week we'll dive into that more. And we'll try to go into the whys and the whats instead of just knee-jerk reactions. But right now, this is a knee-jerk reaction because I haven't really gotten into it yet. The game ended not too long ago. But why is it that this team is struggling so much? And you see the thing tossed around a lot as they're a soft team. Even, on ESPN, Rex Ryan, who, whatever you think about Rex Ryan, he is a good defensive mind. Like he's built some good teams defensively in his heyday when he was, and he calls them soft on offense and on defense, basically. Mostly on defense, though. And so what makes a soft team? I mean, we saw it to the Niners when you just get gashed for 40 runs and you cannot stop it, even when you know it's coming. We see it on Rams offense when you don't keep the defense honest by pounding the rock, running the football. And I'm curious how much of that is, I mean, obviously it's play calling, obviously, but I mean, how much of that is McVay, like we've criticized so much, just over coaching and wanting to get cute, abandoning the run, or how much of it is that him not truly trusting his running backs? Darrell Henderson has a spot on this team. Darrell Henderson, in my opinion, as I've said many, many times, if you listen to this show, is a fantastic complementary back in this offense. Darrell Henderson is not a lead back in the NFL, in my opinion. I don't mean that with any disrespect, but the dude's always a little banged up. His style of running is not a Derrick Henry or a Javonte Williams or a guy that can just knock you in the mouth, drive you back, and break tackles. That's not his style. That's no disrespect. That's nothing against him. Darrell Henderson was drafted to be an 8 to 10 touch back every game and change the pace. And when the defense is tired because you've been knocking them in the mouth with your running back, Darrell Henderson comes in and he can gash you for a 30, 40, 50-yard gain because he's a slasher type back that when the defense is tired, he eats. But he's not the guy that makes the defense tired. I'm not saying because he's not fast. I'm saying tired by knocking you in the mouth over and over and over again, keeping you accountable. When the defense starts saying, man, I am sick and tired of hitting that guy, that's what you want your main running back to do. It's not Darrell Henderson. And so the loss of Cam Akers, I don't think that's really Cam Akers either. But Cam Akers is a much more every down back. He can do a little more. I mean, it was just a big loss losing him. Sony Michel, I think, could be more that, but it doesn't seem like they truly trust him yet. It's hard because some games he does get a lot of reps. Some cases he doesn't. So I don't know how much of that is. Both these guys have been banged up. So it's really hard to evaluate these running backs because it's like Henderson will have, 4 or 5 good rushes and all of a sudden he's out with, an undisclosed bruised something and he doesn't come back until the fourth quarter or he's out the rest of the game. But then he's fine all week on the practice report. He just misses the rest of the game. So it's a really odd scenario and it's a really hard thing to assess because how much of that is just McVay trying to be cute and wanting to throw the football, show off his shiny new toy, Matthew Stafford, and how much is it just he's like, look, I know people want me to run the ball, but I don't trust my running backs to run the ball. Now the counter to that would say, well, we see the running game go good. And I agree with you. I mean, the first drive of the game was 2 great runs, and you counter that with 3 straight passes and you punt. But if I'm just playing devil's advocate, we see those great runs, but then those backs get banged up and all of a sudden they're not the same or healthy. Now, regardless, they need to run the ball more than they do. Regardless. And one way to maximize that, or I guess I should say, make sure that you're able to do that is by not turning the ball over on offense. And so now we get to Matthew Stafford, who has 6 straight games of the turnover. He has 3 pick sixes already, I believe, in 3 straight games. Yeah, 3 straight games, Titans, Niners, and now this one. I saw a stat that Aaron Rodgers has 3 pick sixes his entire career. That's an issue. I've talked about before that Stafford, to me, when I watch him, especially when things start getting a little tough, and this one, and many of the games have started early tough, but it's like then he reverts back to his bad relationship days with the Lions and goes into hero ball mode, starts forcing things, doesn't trust himself. But also on the side of the coaching, the play calling, what made this McVay offense so fun was all the pre-snap motion. It was the jet sweeps, the screens. It was the real kind of close to the line of scrimmage stuff. And then that kind of started getting the defense baiting in, and then it opened things up for the deep ball. Now, I know they had a deep touchdown to Van Jefferson today, so we were able to see that. But it seems like every play they're just going down the sticks. I'm not saying they're going on seam routes every time, but they're going 7, 8, 9, 10-yard routes combinations on every one, and we're not seeing the screen as much as we used to. I used to joke around like, find someone that loves you as much as Sean McVay loves the screen. So he used to run the screen so damn much. Now we never see it. Jet sweeps, we never see it. I know losing Bobby Trees is huge because he was integral in doing that. That was like one of his best roles and features in this offense. But you have guys like Cooper Kupp. Odell now I know is brand new, so he's still learning, but the dude is fast as hell. It's like he can't run a jet sweep or a screen. He doesn't need to be in the offense for 2 months to know how to run a screenplay. Darrell Henderson can, the guy can run screens, which I think he'd be better used for sometimes. But they're not doing that. And I don't really understand why. And they're just trying to push the ball so much downfield and then it just is forcing Stafford to force these throws into tough spots, and it's not ending well. I still think Stafford's a better quarterback. I'm not even going to say the other guy's name because it doesn't need to be said. Yeah, it's not disrespect to him. It's just we need to move on. Enough talking about it. Stafford, though, is still a good quarterback in this league. When other players come to bat for him, Aaron Rodgers, pre this game said he's one of the best quarterbacks he's ever gone against, one of the best in the game. Defensive guys around the league all the time are saying, man, yeah, he's so hard to defend. The arm talent. That's why trust. That's who I trust when you're talking about good quarterbacks. Now, he has not played good in 3 straight weeks. Has not played good at all. I know the stats ended up looking decent today, 300-something yards, 3 touchdowns, and then 1 pick. Did have a fumble as well. But he's not playing well situationally. When you need him to play well, he hasn't been playing well. So we're running out of excuses for it. I still do think, though, he's a good quarterback. I don't know. Hopefully against the Jaguars, it's a get-right game next week. He can come out, get back to those efficient games where they're not playing hero ball. High efficiency, high efficient throws, good completion percentage. I mean, we need it. He needs it. All right, let's get to the defense. Julio, if you're still in here, don't like the bend, don't break defense at times. Yeah, this defense is it's interesting because they are definitely not a great defense. I don't want to sound like I'm defending them in certain aspects, but they are definitely not a terrible defense either. They're worse than they were last year, which anyone that thought they were going to be as good was lying to themselves. You lose your defensive coordinator, and I know you bring in a new one, you're like, okay, yeah, well, he should be as good. You're going to have some growing pains. You lose 4 key players. Morgan Fox, Michael Brockers, Troy Hill, John Johnson. Those are forced. I know Morgan Fox was rotational, but he had 6 sacks, big role last year. The other 3 were key starters in this defense. Those are big losses. So there was, no matter what, there was going to be a drop-off. If you didn't believe so, you were lying to yourself. That being said, there's things, though, that are definitely frustrating that we're not seeing corrected on a weekly basis. I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from with fans. And I get it. Now, how much of that is coaching and Raheem Morris, and how much of that is just personnel? Because unfortunately, with this mantra that the Rams have done, with this trading assets away, going after the big name players, pushing the cap to the limit, it's fun. You get some great players. It's Hollywood. We're always in the news, which is great, but your depth suffers. And I don't dislike necessarily that that's their mantra and what they do, because I think they've been able to build some really good teams by doing that. And you get guys like Jalen Ramsey and Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. and, among Matthew Stafford and others. But you have to hit on every late round pick, that means, for depth pieces. And they've hit on a lot of them, obviously. The Jordan Fullers who we've seen have played up. I don't think he's been as good this year. Still a great player, though. Was phenomenal last year. Sebastian Joseph Day was a late round pick. Some of these other offensive linemen. So they've hit on a bunch, but they're also haven't hit on all of them. And so then your depth, if you have any injuries whatsoever, hurts. And so now you look at linebackers and you're starting Troy Reeder and a rookie and Ernest Jones, and you're asking them to cover 2 very talented backs coming out of the flats. Everyone's hating on Troy Reeder. Everyone's hating on Raheem Morris. Troy Reeder is not a guy you want covering A.J. Dillon, a running back in general. That's not what he's good at. He's a old school, nose to the grind, plug and holes linebacker. So everyone can blame Raheem Morris all they want. The personnel, though, doesn't totally fit in some of these situations. Not all of them. Now, that being said, there are ways to get creative where you scheme it up differently. You have a talented defensive backfield. Terrell Burgess, I don't understand why the hell he's not on the field. I don't get it. Makes no sense to me. The dude balled out in Utah. He's a 3rd-round pick on it. He balled out last year until he got hurt. So the guy is not fully healthy, or he did something to get in Raheem Morris's doghouse, or he has just dropped off a cliff. Because even Nick Scott, who I love Nick Scott, great special teams player, but he's getting reps on defense and Terrell Burgess can't. Because that's where I would say, okay, They are burning us from intermediate passes in the middle to running backs and tight ends because Troy Reeder and our linebackers cannot cover or stop. We're playing soft zones. Even in man, we can't do it. Let's play a dime package with 6 fast defensive backs, and we'll let them shadow these guys. Play running back spies, tight end spies, whatever you want to call it. That's where you can be creative. Now, Raheem Morris is a lot smarter than I am. But to me, when you're one guy is getting burned over and over and over again, you should usually change something. Usually, let's try something new, even if it's crazy. But that being said, I think the defense is not the reason the Rams lost this game. I know you see 35 points or whatever, 36 points on the scoreboard, but, pick 6, had a muffed punt or kickoff, whatever it was, 2 bad special teams plays back to back. And that's a whole other story. I'm not even going to get into that. We'll get into it throughout the week. But there's a lot of this team. I'm going to move on. I got to get to the Chargers here. I mean, we're going on almost an hour and I haven't even got to the Chargers yet. So it's been a day. It's been a day. All this to be said, and I'm going to dive a lot more into this throughout the week on the show. We'll have a lot of articles up on the LA Football Network, so make sure to stay tuned into that. But all that being said, my concern for the Rams, because I said in the very beginning of this segment, I'm a glass half full positive guy, but I am actually concerned now. Is it now we've seen 3 straight games plus a bye week, and it's looked the exact same. Primarily on offense. I think the defense has done good things in those games. I should say the Titans game and this game, the defense did good things. Defense didn't do much good in the Niners game, but they did improve this week. Offense, though, has been pretty much the same all 3 of those weeks. So part of that, I think, is Robert Woods is a huge loss. I don't think anyone downplayed that. I think everyone knows it's a huge loss, but I think it's even more so than we thought. I think the offensive line, who has been really, really good, has not been that good these last 3 weeks. Not bad, not terrible, but definitely a lot worse than the 6 weeks prior. Andrew Whitworth getting uncharacteristic holding calls and other penalties. Brian Allen hasn't played up to where he was in the beginning of the year. So that's been a factor. And then Matthew Stafford is just flustered, man. So he needs this Jags game to just get it right. So much in the NFL is rhythm, consistency. And a lot of that rhythm is week to week. So if you can put together a good performance this week against the Jags, you kind of get rid of that monkey off your back, you move forward. But then a lot of it's drive to drive, play to play. And this offense just can't ever seem to get in a rhythm these last 3 weeks. Kudos to the defenses they've played. Kudos. We didn't even talk about it. Defensive coordinator for the Packers is Barry, former linebacker coach here for the Rams. So he wanted this game damn bad. Sean McVay decided instead of promoting Barry to DC, he'd go out to Atlanta and bring in Raheem Morris. So Coach Barry was not pumped by that. He wanted to stick to this Rams offense, and he did. There's 22 other guys that play against you every week, and there's 15 coaches on the coaching staff. I mean, this is a profession for a lot of people. And the Rams have gotten beat. So they got some things to improve upon. I think they will still. I'm worried. I'm concerned. I'm not down and out. I'm not giving up. This team is too good with too much talent, regardless of some of the inefficiencies that they've shown, regardless of some of the coaching woes they've shown. Too good. They're too talented. So it was a great time to get the Jags now. Great time at home at SoFi. I know the Rambling's going to show out. I know there's a lot of disappointment, but I know the Rambling's going to show out still on Sunday. Hopefully we'll be down there tailgating and trying to get these guys all fired up and a big Rams victory. And they'll be okay. All right, on to the Chargers now. Need to sip after that monologue. If you're in here drinking, let me know. Let me know in the chat what you're sipping on. If you're new in here and didn't hear before, this is a nice Costco Canadian blend. High class here at the Dyrud house. High class. Needed it. Had a few Golden Roads earlier. Had to switch over to whiskey, though. Got the daughter to bed. Got her, bathed. Got her down. Let's pour some of the good stuff. The good stuff that, cost me like $11 at Costco. Chargers game. Chargers Broncos. The Chargers seem to just not play the Broncos well in Denver. Overall, I feel like it's always a split kind of between these two teams. They play each other very evenly. But for some reason in Denver, and I know, not for some reason, it's an away game. Denver's a hard place to play. Mile High City, great home field advantage. It's loud, so it's kind of a stupid thing to say, but they do struggle more so than the other teams, Kansas City and now Vegas. They struggle more with Denver in Denver. And this is a game, again, we'll get into a lot more throughout the week. I hate beating a dead horse because I'm one of the few that, not one of the few, but one of the ones that don't believe this is a true coaching deficiency. Now, there are issues that we will get into. I'm not saying coaches are totally off the hook. But to me, it's more about the execution. And so much, I don't know what it is. I really don't when you watch these games. And again, Twitter is a different place than when you watch it at a bar or watch like with a close group of friends, I think, to an extent. But it seems like whenever anything goes wrong, the first ones to blame are the coaches. Fire them all. Get them out of here. Totally outcoached in this game. Don't know what's going on. Now, of course, when you lose a football game, it's a failed game from everyone. Everyone. From the owner down to the equipment manager. You all failed. That's a very blunt way to say it, but it is. You lost the game. Everyone failed. There's no moral victories. There's no game balls to go out in a loss. You only give game balls out in a win. But when it's immediately like, wow, we thought we had a great coach. Now we don't. Offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi, fire him. He can't do anything right. Can't scheme right. Horrible script. I don't know if we're watching the same game. Okay, let's see how I can decipher this or explain this correctly. When you watch a game, and again, I'll get more into the X's and O's later in the week when I watch the film back. But when you watch play calling, we'll talk offense specifically. And all you can see on your screen, because if you're at the game, obviously you can see more of this stuff happening behind the scenes. But all you can see on your screen is the quarterback in the pocket when we're talking about pass plays. You don't see all the route combinations. Like, you can see some of them, but as soon as they're off the screen, they're off the screen. You don't know what's going on out there until you either watch the all 22, or if you're at the game, you can see it, or you see highlights or whatnot. So when plays happen in real time and there's immediate, whether you have 3 and out or whether there's missed passes or whatnot, and there's immediately, wow, horrible script, fire Joe Lombardi, worst offensive coordinator. You're not seeing anything. So why I continue to preach, like, no, he has not been the issue. He has things he needs to do better at. Of course, like everyone, they lost the game. They're all to blame. But when you scale back and you look at the screen and everyone's talking about aggressiveness, explosiveness, this, that, put your foot down their throats. Well, then you watch the film, the all 22, and you see these play designs, and you see a 2nd and 7. We'll say, I'm kind of just thinking of an example in the past. Now, I haven't totally gotten to the film on this game yet. 2nd and 7. You see a route combo that, spills a tight end on a post corner route, has him wide open 4 yards down the field, or open by NFL standards. But the offensive line doesn't hold up, and there's pressure on Herbert. He either gets sacked, has to throw it away, has a scramble, or he gets a little hasty because the pressure's starting to come, and he checks it down to, Austin Eckler, or ends up checking it down for an incompletion. all you see on your screen is the check down or the incompletion or the sack, and you say, fire the OC. The OC drew up a play that got someone wide open 40 yards down the field. Now it's up to the players to execute. And if the defensive line is blowing up the offensive line and getting in Herbert's face, or Herbert's having another bad game, which now he has had, this is like his 4th or 5th bad game this season. I still think Herbert's one of the best quarterbacks in the game, but we got to call a spade a spade. He hasn't played great. Didn't play great today. A lot of bad throws, a lot of bad decisions. That interception when the Chargers are driving the ball down the field. At this point, it was a 21-7 game, I think. So game very much in hand. And you throw a pick in the end zone to Patrick Surtain on just a horrible throw. I mean, it was right mano a mano. So I get it. If you want to throw it up, you trust your receiver. This Chargers offense and culture is all about trust. You know, the coaching staff talks about it, trusting your star players. I trust my guys. Herbert trusted his guy. I get that. But it was just egregiously underthrown. 5 yards short of where his receiver was, and Surtain's just sitting there waiting for it in the end zone. Now, the pick six wasn't totally his fault. I always err on the side of if it hits the receiver's hands, it's his fault. Even if it hits the receiver's hand. I was taught when I played high school ball, which I think is a little ridiculous. If you can get one hand on it, you can get two hands on it. Now, we know physically that's just not true. You can reach farther with one hand than you can with both. But that's what my coach always said. If you can get one, you can get two on it. This pass to Austin Eckler, it was behind him, but it hit him with both hands. Went off his hands right into Patrick Surtain and returning for a pick six. It was a bad pass. Eckler's running this way. It was behind him. But I don't put that blame solely on Herbert. I mean, it hit Eckler in the hands. But still, wide open guy, bad pass. So all these factors are happening, and yet people still want to blame the offensive coordinator and want him fired. It just doesn't make any damn sense. It doesn't make any damn sense. Now, I don't truly know what the issue is with this offense right now, because I think they have a ton of talent. They have a top 5 quarterback. I'm willing to say at this point they have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I know he's had 4 or 5 bad games. And when he doesn't play up to snuff, they lose. That's how this team is. That's how most teams are. I mean, anyone that wants to dispute that, Tom Brady plays a bad game, the Bucs usually don't win. Or when he's even years on the Patriots. If you had an off game, those were the games the Patriots lost. Those were the games the Dolphins beat the Patriots because Brady threw for 170 yards and had 2 picks. If Lamar Jackson has an off games, Baltimore's not winning. When Mahomes was not looking very good, the Chiefs were 3-4. So this is nothing new. It's not like this Chargers team is a bad team and they have to rely on Herbert heroics. It's pretty standard in the NFL that when your quarterback plays good, if you have an elite quarterback, you're usually going to win. When Russell Wilson is Russell Wilson, the Seahawks are pretty damn good. When he's not or he's hurt, they're a 3-win team. That's kind of how it is. And it sucks, but Herbert has to play at a top 5 level every single week if this Chargers team wants to make a playoff run. And we can get into how you alleviate that, how you change that. And there are ways. But this is a brand new coaching staff without their personnel. They have 1 draft class and 1 free agency class that they chose. And I know people, and we'll get into it more. I don't want to get into it right now, but there's been personnel decisions by the coaching staff that have been interesting, for sure. Specifically on the offensive line today. I don't know why Brendan Hymus wasn't playing, but I want to get into it more before really laying that out. But it's very surprising to me. Seems like he's a guy that it would be better fit in that line than what was there today, to say the least. But this team's going to live or die by Justin Herbert this season. They can get better next year. But that's just the way the NFL is, guys. It's the way the NFL is. And the Chargers have a top 5 quarterback. But if he doesn't play top 5 every week, they're going to have a hard time winning. If he plays top 15, They're going to lose those close games. If he plays top 25, they're not going to win. Today he played bottom 5. They got blown out. Against Baltimore, he played bottom 5. They got blown out. I mean, it's one of those, we can get into it a ton, but sometimes it's not rocket science. When your quarterback's a superstar, if he plays like a superstar, you win. If he doesn't, you lose. Now, when you look at the defense, obviously they can make things a lot easier for him. And one thing I was talking to Steven about, editor here at LAFB, also does Guilty as Charged. It was shocking when you look, and this is a coaching issue, when you knew Teddy Bridgewater was hurt and he came back in. So I won't even get to Drew Lock because, as bad as he is and can be, he's still a mystery. They're still kind of like, okay, we don't have tape on him this year. There's still some, okay, let's not overhaul things too much. Let's stick to the game plan. When Teddy comes back in, he's not going to be able to run. He's on one leg. So that's not only is he not going to be mobile, that's going to take away from his throwing power. And yet you still run the light box scheme, which is what Staley's defense is. It's what Fangio's defense is. And what I've preached all along is that Staley's great at adjustments, but you don't adjust to stack the box when you know what the Broncos are going to do or just run the football down your throat. And that's what they did. They ran the football down your throat. Javonte Williams, who is, let me make this very clear. I think he's going to be a top 5 running back next season. He's that good. He's probably the best back that was taken in this year's draft, and he was taken in the 2nd round. Melvin Gordon, I know Chargers fans don't like him anymore because of what happened, but he's still a good running back. I mean, if he didn't fumble, he'd be a very good running back. The fumbles are what knock him kind of down a peg. But he's still a good running back. You saw it today. He gashed the Chargers for a few really good runs. But Javonte Williams is a special, special back that is hard to take down. And the Chargers already have tackling issues anyway this season. And then you don't stack the box to try to assist in that. That's kind of the one coaching gaffe where I and Steven was the one that brought it to my attention first. So I want to give him credit, but that I don't totally understand. Now, the offense the Broncos were running, if I'm playing devil's advocate, they run a lot more 11 personnel. Every now and then they do 12 personnel, but a lot more 11. I mean, you're seeing Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Tim Patrick at a minimum usually on the field. So those are your 3 receivers with your 1 running back set. So you can't just stack everyone in the box. It's not like Teddy Bridgewater, whether he's hurt or not. I mean, he's still a 70% completion percentage guy. So you got to at least be respectful in that way. But you don't have to play a too high shell. He's not going to beat you deep on a 50-yard bomb. So I think that's where the frustration comes in. And that's where, I don't understand why they didn't do more to do that. And the biggest play you could see that in is when Drew Lock did go in and all they did was run the football. He threw like 2 out routes and the rest was running the football. 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 9 from the 9-yard line. They ran the ball and scored a touchdown. You should never score a 3rd and goal from the 9 running the football. Ever. Should never happen in the NFL. And it did against the Chargers today. So, again, I said this about the Rams, how I'm concerned, but I'm not down and out. I know they can fix it. I'm the same way about the Chargers. Concerned, worrisome. They're 6-5. The division's wide open. I mean, they're tied now with the Broncos. If the Broncos beat the Chiefs next week, the Broncos are in sole possession of the division. And the Chargers could have the same record, technically, if they beat the Bengals next week. So the season's far from over. Everyone's, doom and gloom. Yeah. I agree with you, Gridiron. Chargers defense should be much better than what they're showing. And I've been trying for weeks to really be able to fabricate why they're struggling. Is it scheme deficiency? Is it personnel fits? Is it execution by players? And I think it's just a number of factors. Like with anything, that's an easy cop-out answer. But I think you have a lot of shifting pieces because of the injuries they have had. They haven't had the big injury, knock on wood, that we've seen in years past with these Chargers team, but they've been banged up at every level. And so they've had to shift guys around and move guys in positions maybe they're not comfortable in yet. We've seen Chris Harris move around a bunch, and at his, veteran status, maybe he doesn't feel comfortable playing safety as much as he'd like. Mark Webb was a guy I was huge on. I think he's a 7th-round pick, but I was really excited about seeing this defense. He's been hurt for the last 5 weeks. Nasser Adderley's been banged up a bunch. Alohi Gilman now has been banged up. So Nas was out. Alohi stepped in to start. Now Nas is back and Alohi's been out. Your backers have been banged. Kenneth Murray missed time. Drew Tranquil missed time. So I think the combination of just having so many guys go up and down, and we haven't had the devastating season-ending injuries, but we've had guys every single week, key contributors on this defense out. They can't get in that true cohesive rhythm. I think that is what I would attribute to being the number one issue with this defense, is they just can't find that cohesive rhythm. Part of it is personnel. I don't think all these personnel pieces fit with what this scheme wants to be. And part of that is you would hope coaching would adjust to that. Part of that is that, coaches, they're going to get their guys in next year and make some changes. But I don't think it's like a deficiency in talent. I don't think it's a deficiency in coaching. I just think the two haven't fully meshed yet, which you don't want to see 12 weeks in. You would hope we'd be saying this 3 weeks in, and it'd be very different. But I just think the as I mentioned, the number of injuries that have happened week in and week out have just disallowed for a cohesion between the scheme and the personnel that's available. That's, I think, Asante Samuel Jr. is out this week. The week before was Mike Davis. You're always missing one key player at one level. So they just can't quite all get on the same page. But a lot of teams have injuries. So, the Broncos, way more injuries than the Chargers. Broncos are on their 8th line. They had to trade for 2 linebackers because they're on linebacker 7 in their own building. And they traded for 7 and 8, getting Kenny Young from the Rams and getting Weatherly from Minnesota. And they're starting a rookie and Baron Browning playing kind of everywhere. They brought up Justin Stranad, who they drafted last year, who missed all of that stuff. Everyone's banged up, but I think just the Chargers, the fact that it's every week it's someone different, they just can't get in that cohesion. It's as soon as you get one guy back, one guy else is down. And so they just can't seem to find it. I think they will. I believe in this scheme. I'm a huge Staley guy, as you all know. I truly believe in his coaching prowess, his relationship building, and his scheme. It's the Fangio scheme. It's the Fangio scheme. We saw what Fangio's defense did today to the Chargers. We saw what Fangio's defense did 2 weeks ago to the Cowboys. We've seen what Fangio did with the Niners, what he did with the Bears, what he's done. Fangio's a defensive mastermind. Brandon Staley learned directly from Fangio. He went from Jordan Carroll to Fangio because he respected him so much and wanted to learn and tutor under him. So the scheme will work. It's getting the players cohesion, but he does need to adjust in certain situations. And we didn't see that today against the Broncos. I've seen it other times throughout the years. I've seen it like today where he hasn't. So that's one thing coaching-wise that needs to improve. But then a lot of it's execution too. At the second half today, and we'll kind of wrap up with this, the Broncos were down to one starter on the offensive line. Lloyd Cushenberry, their center, who's their worst starter also of the 5 total. They're down their 2 starting tackles. They ended up down to their third string tackle because their backup tackle went out in this game as well, had to get stretchered off. And they're down to a rookie guard in Quinn Miners and a sophomore, a second-year guard in Muti out of Fresno State, who was injured all last year. You're down to that. And you have Joey Bosa, you have Uchenna Nwosu. You have Kyler Fackrell. You have Jerry Tillery. And you can't beat that offensive line. That's where I look and I say yes, coaching things need to change, but that's pride and that's hat on a hat execution. Beat the man in front of you. Joey Bosa going against a third string tackle. The guy was on the practice squad 2 days ago. Joey Bosa should have had a Matt Judon day against Storm Norton. You didn't hear Joey Bosa's name once. Should have had a Micah Parsons day against Storm Norton. Star players that go up against lesser talent should ball out. Where was Joey Bosa today? I absolutely love Joey Bosa. I think he's one of the best defensive ends, pass rushers in the game. One of the best. He called game blouses last week against the Steelers. But you're going up against a practice squad tackle. Where were you? Now, I know the Broncos did things, kudos to them, to take him away from the game, running the football away from him. Teddy didn't drop back a ton in the pocket, but, it was still 20-plus passes. So that's where I know people get angry at coaching staffs, but that's where the players just got to play, man. I don't care what the scheme is. I don't care that it was a 4-3 last year instead of 3-4 this year. Bosa's role is different, yes. He does a different role now. But he's still an edge rusher. Might not be, the guys next to him might be different. His gaps may be a little different. His role in the running game may be different. But when it comes truly down to it, and I'm sure if he was sitting next to me, he would say it differently. But when you're watching the game, when it comes truly down to it, they snap the ball, he rushes the passer. You're going against a practice squad player. You got to get after the quarterback. So that's where these Chargers need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Because they have at least one superstar at every level on this team. Every level. You have Rashawn Slater on the offensive line and Corey Linsley. You have two on the offensive line. Obviously, Justin Herbert. I would call Austin Eckler a superstar. I don't think anyone would consider him a top 2 running back. But because of what he does in both the rushing and the passing game and blocking, I consider him a superstar. Keenan Allen's a superstar. Mike Williams, I don't know if I call him a superstar, but he's a pretty damn good receiver. Joey Bosa, superstar. Backer may be the one position we don't have a superstar, but Kaiser White's been pretty damn good this year. I wouldn't call him a superstar, but pretty damn good. And Derwin James is the superstar. The superstar of superstars. So you have pretty much a superstar on every level. Players are going to take a look in the mirror and say, we got to just play damn better. We got to execute better. Sometimes that's how simple that. Sometimes we overcomplicate the game of football. And sometimes it's as simple as going out, making a tackle, making a catch, making a run, being better than the guy in front of you. We can talk about scheme and coaching and play calling and, timeout usage, game clock management, this and that. Sometimes it's about making a play. Think back to when we were in school playing, backyard football, not the video game, but actually out there running with shoes on, playing, in the schoolyard. And you're out there just in your Vans, your tennis shoes, and you're out there making plays. That's what these players need to do. They need to go out there and make plays. I think they can do it. I know they can do it. It's a good coach team, top 5 quarterback. It's got to execute. So tough game next week, traveling to Cincinnati against the Bengals, who just absolutely lit up the Steelers. I think it was 41-10 was the final. Bengals are a tough team, though, because some weeks they look like this, dynamic, and some weeks they don't. So you never know what Bengals you're going to get. But overall, this is a good Bengals team. The coach, Zach Taylor's in his 3rd year now, so he's really got his bearings down coaching-wise. And yeah, so it's going to be a tough game. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, it's going to be a great, pick 1, pick 6, going head to head. I'm going to get into it all week. What scares me the most is that receiving core. I mean, Joe Mixon scares me because of this Chargers, rush defense and what the Broncos just did. But Asante Samuel Jr., I'm assuming will miss another game for sure with that second concussion. Mike Davis hasn't played particularly well so far this year, or at least as of late. Tevin Campbell obviously has not played well at all. And now you go against the receiving core with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. There's some damn good receivers you got to go up against. And Joe Mixon. So they're again, it's going to come down to this defensive line because this is not a good offensive line. The defensive line of the Chargers has to play better next week than they did this week against the Broncos if they want any shot of winning this ball game. That's going to be I'm going to talk about it all the week. That's going to be the key to the game. Whether it's Jerry Tillery, whether it's Covington, whether it's obviously Joey Bosa, all these guys are going to have to play balls out if the Chargers want any shot. Because the Bengals' weakness is the offensive line. So how do you win games? You exploit the weakness. So we'll see if they can do that. But I appreciate all you guys so much for tuning in here. Gridiron, last question. Let's go ahead and Ryan, what's your personal take on Taylor Rapp? So yeah, back to the Rams while we wrap up here. Rapp's tough, man, because he does some things well, and I don't want to just sound like I'm repeating everyone out there that talks about it, but he's a good box safety. He's a good tackler. He's a thumper. That's what he was at Washington. He was a guy that, ran up to the box and laid you out, laid the wood. He was the highlight safety, when you're watching the tape back with your boys and you just, boom, you get that thump. That was Taylor Rapp, and that's what he is. So now seeing him drop back in coverage, and this is one of those, again, those coaching things that I'm not as critical on Raheem as others, but those are the things where I'm like, I don't know why you're utilizing Taylor Rapp in a role that I don't think he fits in. I would have liked to see him be that Troy Reader today. He could stand in the middle there, and when those running backs, A.J. Dillon, are trying to do those shallow, little crossing routes from the backfield, and where they were just lighting up Troy Reader in the middle of the field, put Taylor Rapp in that role. He can thump. He can tackle good. I don't want to see him out in space, though, with these receivers and tight ends. This is not what he's utilized for. So the long answer made longer. I think he's a good player. He just has a certain role and a certain skill set. And he's not an every down safety, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think it's not smart, in my opinion. Again, these coaches are smarter than I am. But in my opinion, you don't want a Taylor Fuller or a Jordan Fuller and Taylor Rapp duo at safety. I still will say, and I don't know what the hell is going on, but I think Fuller and Burgess are your best two safeties. And then Rapp, like he was used last year, because this is what he did last year. He was your come in certain situations, your nickel, your dime, your box safety that came in when you're stacking the box, when it's a run, it's a run situation, you bring him in to be that thumper. That's where he's great. But if you want to utilize him like a Kareem, Jackson, Justin Simmons combo in Denver, where those are your two safeties, I don't think he fits that role. So, yeah, reminds you of Adam Archuleta. Yeah, that's a good comp. So I think he definitely fits as a safety linebacker hybrid. And I would love to see Burgess as the actual true safety. I honestly don't. I'm sure reporters have asked. I'm sure they have. I just haven't seen it publicly. When I go back and watch the videos or transcripts, I haven't seen it. I'm sure they have. But I'm just so curious why Burgess is not getting playing time. And like I said earlier, I don't know if you were tuning in earlier, but I love me Nick Scott. One of my first interviews I ever did on this show. Awesome guy, phenomenal special teamer. He's a good safety too. But the fact that Nick Scott's getting defensive playing time and not Taylor Burgess, I don't get it. I don't know what's going on. So I would love to talk to Raheem and just ask him, not be a dick about it. Just say what is the issue with TB? What's going on? So, but anyway, guys, I've rambled on way more than I'm sure you wanted to listen to. We're going on an hour and a half. But hey, love talking ball. I appreciate all of you for tuning into the LA Football Podcast. Make sure to check out our sponsors. MyBookie.ag is the promo code LAFB to double your deposit. Make sure to check out our friends at Golden Road Brewery right here in Los Angeles. They got locations in LA, in Anaheim, and in Huntington Beach. Can't go wrong. We do events there. We've done a few already. We're going to do a few more. We'll probably do a bunch all off season too. So, but thank you all for tuning in. I'll be around all week. The LA Football Podcast. We're doing 2-3 a week. We got the Rams Brothers podcast on here, which I'm sure they'll have plenty to say tomorrow when they record. And then also Chargers Unleashed. They'll too have a lot to say. And then we got it feels so long ago I was talking about college, but let's end it with hey, Bruins going to a bowl game. Trojans get Lincoln Riley. We got some good news in LA with our football teams. I know it was a rough day for the Rams and Chargers, but it's going to be brighter on the other side. They're going to get it right. Let's end it positive. They're going to get it right. Rams beat the Jags. Chargers beat the Bengals. We'll prep them all week. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Be safe. Be healthy. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Find me on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud, LAFB.